Welcome to the NAHA webinar brought to you by the National Association for Holistic Aromatherapy. To learn more about NAHA, please visit www.naha.org. Tonight's presentation topic is Practical and Energetic Self-Care Tools Using Aromatherapy. This educational webinar is being presented by Betty Torres. Betty is a certified aromatherapist and has been studying herbal medicine and creating essential oil body care products for herself and her family for over 12 years. After having her first child, she realized how difficult it was to find safe and natural baby oils and salves for herself and her children, so she created her own. This was the beginning of her business called Poetic Potions. I love that name. A business she started as a way to offer safe and gentle aromatherapy body care products for the community. Betty also offers aromatherapy consultations and intuitive mentoring sessions to help busy women and moms who feel like they never have enough time to take care of themselves. Betty is also the NAHA Regional Director for Northern California region, and to learn more about Betty, please visit her website at www.poeticpotions.com. And I'd like to just take a moment and welcome Betty for being here this evening on this really wonderful topic that I think everybody needs to know about, whether you're a aromatherapist or a practitioner or somebody just uses essential oils at home. We all get so wrapped up in what we're doing, helping others with the essential oils, that we often don't take the time to take care of ourselves. So this is a really important topic, and I'm really happy that you're presenting on it.
Thank you so much, Kelly, for inviting me to do this webinar. And thank you to everyone on this call for joining us. And also to those who will listen to the recording later, of course. I'm really excited to share what I have learned over the years, what I have learned about myself, what I've learned from mentors that I have worked with, and also what I've learned not only working with other busy moms and busy working men and women, but from all of the benefits that we get every time we come together to exchange ideas in non-judgment and support when it comes to our self-care, so that we remind each other about why we do what we do and that we are not alone. And I want to start off with my intention for offering this webinar. My intention is that by the end of this call, you will find at least one self-care ritual that you can immediately start implementing tonight. And also to have a paradigm shift where you start to see self-care in a completely different way and make it a priority in your life. I want this workshop to feel practical, to feel doable and realistic. And I say that because I understand that when people hear the word self-care, especially in the same sentence as aromatherapy, we think spa day, right? Or a massage, or we think that the only way to make time for self-care rituals is to take a day off of work or to take a day off from being a mom. And while those things are amazing, and yes, we all know we should do them from time to time. And, you know, for some people, this is not difficult to do on a weekly basis. For some people, this comes natural to them, you know, and I've met these people and I actually see them as my mentors, because one of the most important things that I have learned is that the busier we are, from the more self-care that is required. Right? And self-care is not something that we want to wait and do monthly, or wait until we are depleted, or wait until we are sick in bed. Having self-care rituals is actually what will prevent us from getting sick and from losing motivation and energy on the things that we love to do. So this is a picture of my daughter and I selling some of my products at an art walk event. It was really fun. She loves coming with me and listening to me talk about essential oils to people and about body scrubs. And she loves seeing the people coming up to our table and smell the bath salts and all the goodies that we have, and people saying, it smells so good, right? And I started my aromatherapy journey as Kelly mentioned, making my baby products. But as the years went on, I got super busy, super tired. I started feeling tired all the time, right? I was homeschooling. I had a newborn. I also have a 14-year-old, so that's my 6-year-old daughter in the picture. So I had a newborn. I was homeschooling my fourth grader. I was building my business. My husband was traveling often. And I had all this aromatherapy knowledge and all these beautiful essential oils just sitting on my shelf, and I wasn't using them. We all know the benefits that essential oils have for us and for our family, but what good are they if we don't use them? I just didn't know how to use them for what I was feeling and what I was going through. I like looking at this picture because it reminds me of how much I need to teach about self-care because I need it. And so before I get into the agenda for today and the topics that we are covering, I want to highlight that I don't teach self-care because I'm never stressed out or have ever felt stressed before. If we never felt overwhelm or anxiety, then we wouldn't need self-care, right? In fact, it's the complete opposite. I teach about self-care and I share what has worked for me and the way these tools have helped me because I have experienced losing my flow of life and going on a downward spiral long before I knew about essential oils. And so before I discovered aromatherapy, I was actually in a deep dark hole in my teen years and in my early 20s, and I suffered from depression. I dropped out of high school, and that just started a really bad snowball effect that I couldn't stop. I was only 16 years old when I started experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and from there it just got worse. I'm not going to go into detail about how bad it was, but luckily I did have mentors that knew how to deal with me, how to help me. I dropped out of school, but then I went back to school and I went to an alternative high school. I hardly ever went, but the teachers there, somehow they saw my potential. They liked my writing because I wrote poetry and I shared it with them for some of my assignments, for English class. And they liked my creative expression. And so for whatever reason, they gave me a chance after chance. And eventually I did graduate from high school and they even gave me a job there. They wanted me to be a teacher's assistant because they thought that I could help the other students since I was close to their age and they would be able to relate to some of the struggles that I went through. And so because these teachers gave me a chance, I actually started believing in myself again. And really, that was the beginning of my healing journey early on. And, I was really trying hard to stay sober, but after that type of lifestyle, it was difficult to stay clean because I was suffering from depression. And I didn't know it at the time, but looking back on it now, it's very clear that that's what was going on. I was depressed, but I just didn't know it. And so I got to a point where I did have to reach out for help. I spoke to pastors, I started reading the Bible, I read Buddhism. I got really interested in religion and all types of religion and philosophy. And I did enroll in community college. The teachers I worked with at that alternative school, they told me that I can have a job there under one condition, and that was that I enroll in community college. But that was the best thing I ever did. I started learning how to take care of myself because I didn't want to lose that job. And I didn't want to disappoint these people that believed in me. And I share this story because I can say that early on, I understood that self-care is a necessity for me and not a luxury. And so community college was life-changing for me. It led me to all the right people and all the right experiences. I was in alignment. Things weren't easy, not at all, but I was in alignment and my life felt like it was in flow again and it had meaning. I came across my first self-help book. It was called You Can Heal Your Life. I'm sure some of you have heard of it, by Louise Hay. And it's funny because I got that book from my psychology class, and I only chose that book because the teacher, the psychology teacher, she told us all that it was, she gave us a book, a book list, and she said, this one is the shortest book. So, she knew exactly how to have us all choose that book. And of course, that's why I chose that book. But after reading that book, it really did change my life. And another book that I came across was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And that book was assigned by my English teacher. And the seven habits book was the first time that I learned the term paradigm shift. And so a lot of really cool things started happening. I took a music class. I met other musicians that were my age, other poets, and that's why I named my business Poetic Potions. I started reciting poetry in public and in little coffee houses, and a lot of really good things were happening. Another book that I came across that was really life-changing was The Herbal Healing for Women by Rosemary Cady, and I'm sure that a lot of you have heard of this book also. And so eventually I learned that with any type of dependency on alcohol or drugs, it affects our dopamine levels, which is our reward and pleasure center in the brain. And this is when I got really serious about my health. I used herbal medicine to nourish my depleted nervous system and organs, and I started going to sweat lodges and being part of indigenous ceremonies, actually. And, I was purging all of that stuff out of my system, but it also gave me access to life energy again, and it nourished my soul. And I even developed a relationship to Mother Earth and nature, and I developed my intuition, and it was exactly what I needed. And I can even say that I somehow reset my brain. I wasn't at all craving anything to do with unhealthy people or, self-destructive lifestyle anymore. So fast forward 15 years later, right? This was all 15 years ago, and I turned out okay. I'm one of the lucky ones, actually. And that was the beginning again of how I started my love of self-development and herbal healing and intuitive and spiritual practices and ceremonies and aromatherapy, of course. After a few years of deep healing, I wanted to share my knowledge with people, and my new beliefs around self-care was that small little actions and rituals can have a huge difference in our life, because I was proof of that. But I can also say that I could not have done it without the help of other people and support, which is why now I do this just to, I'm passing along all of the wisdom and knowledge that has been shared with me over the years. And so let's fast forward again to when I got my life together. I'm a certified aromatherapist. I have my little side business. I have 2 kids, and it's been almost 10 years of being clean and sober and focusing on my health. So I'm talking about 5 years ago, right? Because I did have another moment in my life when I was homeschooling my son, like I mentioned in the beginning. He's in 4th grade at that time. I had a newborn. I was super overwhelmed. My husband was out of town a lot. And I haven't talked about being a working mom, because I was also a working mom at one point. And, by that time I was a stay-at-home mom because, for whatever, I chose to risk having less money and grow my business. And I was also a working mom. So even though I chose this stay-at-home lifestyle, work-at-home mom lifestyle, I was on the verge of panic attacks daily for about a week. I'm not sure exactly, maybe, I don't know if it was for a week or longer, but I didn't go into full-fledged panic attacks because I had learned breathing exercises to help me. And I had these healing modalities that I learned over the years. And when I was really burned out, I had other tools that helped me with that, for example, like making myself valerian tea or skullcap tea. And when I was sick, I used my aromatherapy. Okay, so this is my point. I used these tools when I was already burned out. It hadn't occurred to me that I was only taking care of myself when it was too late, right? And again, this had to do with my belief around self-care. I knew for a fact that little action steps can lead to big changes. My belief was that self-care was for after I was burned out, or only when we are in chaos like I was before. And so the example I shared before, when I was in my teen and early years, that was an example of when I didn't know how to take care of myself. And it was sort of an excuse, right? And then I got help. But what was my excuse now? What it was that I didn't know how to incorporate these techniques in practical ways, maybe. But a big part of it was that I just forgot. I loved being a mom. I loved helping people. I knew how to do these things. I just forgot to do them for myself. We all forget, right? We're all so busy with our day-to-day lives. Either we forget or we don't know how to make it easy for ourselves to implement them into our life and turn it into daily self-care rituals so that they are preventative health practices for our body, mind, for our emotions, for our spirit, to make sure that we don't lose our life force. So here's the agenda for today. And because I have experience with, self-destruction and self-sabotage, I think that I have a unique perspective on self-care. And so what I am going to cover today is what self-care is, how self-care and self-reflection go hand in hand, self-care and empowerment, self-care and mindfulness practices. I also have a 5-step process that I created so that you can easily start your own self-care practice. Aroma guides, that's what I call essential oils, and creating self-care aromatherapy blends. So before I get into the essential oils and explain the 5-step process, I would like to give you an idea of what self-care is by telling you what self-care is not. So self-care is not a plan for feeling guilt, shame, or resentment when you don't do it. So guilt when you don't do it, or shame when you took a whole day to yourself on Sunday, but now it's Monday and here you are back to your old patterns. So you tell yourself that self-care doesn't work, right? Or resentment. So resentment is when you tell yourself, I was told that self-care was good, but now that I took a day off for myself, everything is worse. That is not self-care. You will know it's self-care because you feel good that you did it, no matter what. So the second one is self-care is not meant to eliminate life's challenges. It helps you flow and get through your challenges with grace, right? And the third one is self-care is not about perfection or waiting for the perfect time to do it, for the quote unquote perfect time to do it, right? It's not about creating the perfect sacred spa retreat in your home when your home is a mess. So you tell yourself, my home is a mess. How can I create any type of self-care? So self-care is exactly for the complete opposite of this. In fact, when things are not perfect is exactly when we need self-care the most. However, it's also when we tend to not even think about it. Self-care doesn't even occur to us when we need it the most, which is why it's best to choose 1 or 2 self-care routines to implement and have it become a daily habit so that it's an easy access tool for us during, the most stressful times when it's not the ideal time to learn or start something new. And so that is what we are going to cover in the 5-step process. And by the way, I'm also talking about using our essential oils here. So incorporating essential oils into our self-care rituals as well. So the next one is self-care is not always easy, yet it can be very simple. Sometimes self-care means getting our butts up early in the morning, right? So that we have time to read or meditate or go to the gym. And remember, how it is true self-care, right? It's when you feel good. That's when it is true self-care. You don't mind getting up early in the morning to do your routine. And so self-care is not fixed or unchanging. It always changes as we change. And so just like anything in life and the cycles of nature, everything changes, right? When things don't change, they are stagnant energy. So be aware of that. You will most likely be changing your routine as the seasons change or when you are in a different phase in your life. So same with self-care. So what can self-care do for us? So once I was able to flow with life again, I was better able to make decisions. And now I can easily identify the triggers in my day, my day that throw me off balance. I stopped homeschooling my son. It was a difficult decision. It made me really sad at the time, but it was a good one. My son is now in 8th grade. He's about to go to high school, and I ask him sometimes if he would like to homeschool again. He's like, no. So that's good, now looking back on it, it was a tough choice, but it was a good one, something that I had to do for myself. And because I had developed some routines that helped me tap into my inner guidance, I feel like that was the way that I was able to start making better decisions for myself and not go on a downward spiral as I had before. And so self-care can help us be resilient. It will allow us to enjoy our life. It's an effective tool for empowerment, and we want to sustain the energy of life and flow with life, right? The life that we want to live. And of course, when we integrate self-care with essential oils, it is can be amazing, right? So I believe that self-reflection and self-care go hand in hand. It's an important part, self-reflection, it's an important part of self-care and reflection. It will help lead you to create change in the current patterns and identify the triggers in your life that you want to change. Also, the phases of the moon is nature's way of reminding us to practice reflection and awareness, and is a powerful tool when we combine it with our self-care rituals. We can combine our self-care with the natural rhythms of nature, the seasons, sunrise, sunset, and those are all powerful energetic tools to combine with aromatherapy and our self-care rituals. And one of the easiest ways to start becoming aware and in tune with the cycles of nature are with the phases of the moon. And the way that I started doing this was by noticing the moon patterns, and I did one ritual every month. I set one intention every month. I would say, I want to feel peaceful. I want to feel joy again. I want to love what I do every day. And, something along those lines. And so then I started changing them to affirmations. For example, I would say, I am peaceful. I am joyful every day. And every month I did this. I felt big changes in my attitude and in my emotions. And I would even ask, when things were really bad in the beginning, I would just ask, what if I could have the life I want? What do I want? What if I act as if, right? Those are examples of some reflection questions that we can start with. And so also the domino effect. I don't think I have too much time to go into the theory of the domino effect, but it's pretty self-explanatory, right? One small action can make immense change, and all we have to do to start is plant our seeds of intention. So I looked up the definition of what empowerment means, and empowerment, the definition under Google, it said it's the process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's rights. And I agree with this definition for the most part. I just don't like the word controlling. I think we should replace that with the word flow. And here's why. What if there are outside circumstances that we can't control, right? It happens. It could be anything from health issues or our child getting sick or money issues, just anything that's an external event or experience that is outside of our control. And it doesn't mean that we won't feel sad or angry when these external circumstances happen, but I do believe that we can choose to align with our intentions. And this is what we do for our clients sometimes, right? For some of us that have an aromatherapy practice or a healing practice, our clients, many times they come to us when they feel out of control and they've lost their flow of life. And we guide them. That we not only give them essential oils, but essential oils help them align with their intentions again. And so mindfulness practices, I believe that is one of the ways that we can take 100% responsibility for how we respond to situations outside of our control. There's no way that we will ever be able to control anyone, control the weather, control Mother Earth, or any external circumstance, right? So having mindfulness as part of our self-care practice is the way that we will be able to handle when things are out of our control. And these are examples of some of the mindfulness practices that we can do anytime with or without essential oils. But of course, with essential oils, it's a lot better. And like I said, these practices are, they're effective on their own. And imagine what we can create for ourselves or for someone else when we learn some of these practices along with essential oils, right? These need to be part of our ongoing self-care. And this is an example of some reflection questions that we can start with. I'm a big believer in journaling. That was one of the things that I did to really change my life. Along with some of the other things that I mentioned, but my poetry, that was one of the ways that I started journaling. And the poetry was it was like I really needed to express myself. I really needed to be honest, like deeply honest, but I didn't want anyone else to know and read what I was reading. So what I did was I would mask my feelings into different words and poetry. So it was very abstract poetry, and that way if somebody else read it, they would think it was beautiful. But they didn't exactly know what I was going through. So that was the beginning of how I started with self-reflection also. And now I journal a little more traditionally, but I'll get into that a little bit later. So this is an example of reflection questions, and what self-reflection can do for us is um, give us awareness about what we can and can't control. What part of our day is the biggest source of stress and overwhelm? Or what person, experience, or event triggers our anxiety or overwhelm? And here's a quote by Gandhi. Happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. And I bring up Gandhi because no matter what our spiritual beliefs are, there's no denying that he is a wise man. It doesn't seem like he's in denial about the world's unfortunate circumstances, or that he's fake happy, or that he's ever sad, right? We don't know. I don't know. I'm assuming he's not. And I bring this up because I found a really interesting article in HuffPost. Actually, I saw a TED Talk by someone by the name of Daniel Gilbert, and he talked about synthetic happiness versus natural happiness. But I want to bring up what HuffPost said about this TED Talk. It said, I'm quoting, being happy is quite simple. You want something, you get what you want, and boom, you're happy. That's a natural happiness. But what happens when you don't get what you want? Simple, right? You aren't happy. Could you be happy even after not getting what you want? Yes. But you have to synthesize happiness, end quote. So in energy medicine, spirituality, and religion, and shamanistic healing, and indigenous ceremonies, these practices and beliefs, they teach you the opposite of what this HuffPost article said, right? The article said, you want something, you get it, and you're happy. And if you don't get it, you're unhappy. But is that what the real world is like? We can really learn. I don't think so. Right? I mean, we can really learn a lot from nature about this, because the natural order of life is not to control things. Like, as I mentioned before, we think we get used to needing to get things, right? And that's not what, Mother Earth and the planet teaches us. It's just not always about getting things. And bear with me, I have a point about this. So now I'm going to get into the rituals. So studies show that in order to change your belief, you need to change your action. But in order to change your action, you must change your belief or your behavior. And here is why I spent a lot of time talking about my experience and giving you a long-winded explanation about why self-care is a necessity and not a luxury. And it's because, self-care will help us create a pattern of evidence in our brain to observe and build trust. And, self-reflection is one of the first mindfulness self-care practices. But if we have a belief that is standing, according to this and some research that has been done, if we have a belief that is standing in our way of living the life that we want, or standing in the way of self-care practices, we want to find out about that. So here is the 5-step process. And I'm hoping that I have somehow changed your belief by now about self-care in a positive way, and that you will actually start implementing some of these practices in your life, or talking to your clients about this in a different way as well, because now we are getting to the step-by-step practical stuff. And if you have had a paradigm shift or an aha moment, then I know that you will start implementing these practices into your life. So step 1, set an intention. This is an example of something that is really simple, but not always easy, as I mentioned before. It takes a little bit of practice to have clarity about our intention, and the key word here is practice, right? You can start a practice of daily intention setting with some of the reflection questions that I shared, and you're all going to get a copy of this, so you can use those reflection questions that I shared to journal and to start creating an intention for yourself. So, you know, some of the reflection questions was asking what you don't want. And it's okay to start with what you don't want. We don't want to be in denial here, right? But we also don't want to dwell on what we don't want. We don't want to be in that energy of not wanting and go into victim mode, right? We can transform that energy. We need to know what we don't want and transform that energy of what we don't want into the opposite of that. And that can be a great start to setting your self-care intentions. And there are also really nice essential oils to help with setting intentions. And, you know, there are oils to help with courage. Sometimes it takes a little bit of courage to see and get clear about what we really don't want. And, you know, oils that are grounding, like cedarwood. You know, we will talk about that a little bit later. Or, you know, we also might want help with opening our heart chakra and use oils like rose or geranium, and rosemary can also help us with clarity and focus. And so step 2 is decide how much time you would like to commit to your self-care. And this is really important because we need to be realistic, not how much time you hope to have, but how much time do you have? And it doesn't matter if you have 5 or 10 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, because consistency is the key. And just because you have 10 minutes a day, don't think that that's not enough. 10 minutes of consistent meditation in the morning, of journaling every single day, it's, you know, it really makes a big difference. Take a sip of water. Okay, so step 3 is to choose one self-care ritual and or aromatherapy blend based on the amount of time you choose to commit to. And I say and or because if you don't have an aromatherapy blend ready, I don't want that to be an excuse to not start your ritual. You choose your ritual based on how much time you have, not the other way around. So I hope that makes sense. So this is what I mean. So you create your, so these are some tips to create, or, you know, you can create your own self-care ritual, or you choose something that has worked for you in the past, or choose one of these morning and evening rituals that I will put here in a minute. So these are examples of some morning self-care rituals. And I do suggest that you start with either a morning ritual rather than an evening, because this will set you up energetically for the rest of your day. And I'm not going to go through each one of these because, you know, as we mentioned, you will all have a copy of this and you can choose which one resonates with you the most. My daily requirement is light a candle and journal, and I feel really good. And, you know, I miss it sometimes. I'm not super religious about doing it every morning, but I can tell when I don't have my self-care ritual in the morning, things are a little bit, feel a little off. And so these are examples of some evening rituals. Evening rituals can also set you up for the next day if you do them consistently. For some reason, I have a little bit of a harder time with evening rituals, and it's easy I did find myself trying to do a ritual, and I do sometimes. I created a dream blend, which I will share the recipe with everyone a little bit later. And you know, I have it right by my bed, and I still forget to use it. But you know, it's okay as long as I do my morning self-care ritual. I'm good about not beating myself up too much about it, and I do it consistently. But you know, my evening ritual, I tend to remember when it's on a full moon or on a half moon. So that's another example of how I use the moon phases to remember my self-care rituals. So now we're on step 4. Step 4 is practice your self-care ritual for 5 days straight. If you do amazing for 5 days straight, then choose another ritual to implement, or choose a little bit of a longer ritual. And step 5 goes along with step 4. You want to record your experience daily. So record every day that you complete your self-care ritual. The intention for doing this is so that you figure out what works and what doesn't work. And not only to figure out what works, but also to build confidence in yourself when you write down this self-care act that you accomplished. You know, when in the beginning, when you first start this, you don't really have confidence that you can do it, right? Especially if you tend to procrastinate a lot. You want to develop a track record. And I did bring this up in this one of the slides earlier, about developing a pattern of evidence in your brain. That's the point of doing this. And I wanted to share this with everyone as well. So this is the trans-theoretical model. It was first developed in the 1980s by alcoholism researchers James O. Prochaska and Carlo Di Clemente. And this model is now being used by behavior psychologists and is used by research scientists to show that there are these steps that we tend to take when we want to change any type of habit or behavior. It's not just about willpower or procrastination. And it's really interesting, isn't it? These steps, there's pre-contemplation, there's contemplation, there's preparation, action, and maintenance. And I don't want to go too much into this because I want to get into the essential oils. But you can see, maybe you can, just by looking at this, you can pinpoint which step you're in. Maybe if you're in the preparation stage or in the action stage, those are the steps when we tend to start and then stop, start and then stop. And it's okay until we get it right. And of course, we want to be gentle with ourselves. There was a study I read about on forgiveness, and a research study with college students and procrastination. And there were 2 groups. Both groups procrastinated on their assignments or homework, but they had one of the groups practice forgiveness. And what happened was that the group that forgave themselves for procrastinating were more likely to do the work afterwards than the group that did not forgive themselves for procrastinating. Isn't that interesting? So let's be gentle with ourselves. If we don't stick to the 5 days of self-care that we committed to, or stop doing it after 5 days, just forgive yourself. Don't dwell on it. Just go back to it if you stop. It's, it's not procrastination, as we saw, it's the TTM model. Those are the steps that we go through when we want to change a pattern or behavior. And now we can get into the essential oils and what I like to call aroma guides. One of the most important things, so this is I really love this. So according to the book Woman Who Glows in the Dark by Elena Avila, she is a registered nurse and also a medicine woman. In her book, she wrote, one of the most important aspects of curanderismo, Spanish word for healing, is that it does not separate the soul and the spirit from the body. It is medicine and spirituality practiced simultaneously. And I just really love this. And I added the word medicine, that medicine can mean many things, because a lesson learned or a challenge that we went through can also be our medicine. For example, what I went through in my teen years was the greatest medicine, right? I didn't know it at the time, and I was ashamed of my past for many years until I changed my perspective. And now I understand that my experience now is a blessing in disguise that led me to my calling in life. Also, I want to say a disclaimer. I understand that essential oils do not cure or heal, but I do believe it is our body that heals. And, you know, I use the word healing, but as a general term, just like I use the word medicine to describe an experience. And we can also heal energetically and spiritually. Let's see. I want to see how much time we have. Okay. Also, many cultures believe that the healer or practitioner must have an energetic or spiritual connection with the plant. Many aromatherapy students have asked me, I'm sure, you know, they always ask, how do I know which brand of essential oils to choose? How do I know which essential oil to use when they're so versatile? And even with the knowledge we have, and with the GCMS testing and the results of the chemical compositions, right, it's still hard to decide sometimes which oils to use. And my advice is always to listen to your inner guidance and develop your relationship with essential oils and the plant spirit. And for some of us that have many years of experience, we've been developing a relationship with the plant spirit and our inner guidance, right? Whether we realize it or not. Working with plants are ancient practices that have been encoded in our DNA and in our cells, which is the reason a lot of us are led to have an interest in aromatherapy and herbal medicine. Also, I want to mention that a very well-known herbalist by the name of Martin Brichtel, he teaches in developing a relationship with plants and plant spirit. And he has the knowledge of over 600 plants and herbs, but it is said that he only works with 6. You know, this is also the way that I started intuitively. I stuck with the same 5 oils for a while, just because I felt like I wanted to have a connection with them because they're so versatile. And, you know, I don't only use 5 now, but I usually use the same 5 as a base. And I'm going to share the 5 essential oils that I use the most. And, you know, I develop a blend from one of these 5 aroma guides that I work with. And before I go into the essential oils, it's very important that we always remind ourselves of the safety, right? Always dilute your essential oils, mix them with carriers, especially when used on children. Do not use in your eyes or your ears. Do not ingest unless under the guidance of a certified aromatherapist. So lavender. Let me see. So I have the botanical name, and I also included some of the chemical compositions. I like to use lavender for guidance and intuition, and also for emotional issues. And I know that lavender is not everyone's first choice to turn to for emotional issues, but since this is the one that helped my emotional issues, this is the kind of relationship that I developed with lavender, um, with the oil and the plant. And I have had really good results with my kids and with my clients with essential oils. And grapefruit, I usually go to lavender, then I decide which citrus to combine it with. And I usually go with lavender, and then I decide another citrus to work with. So grapefruit and lavender, those are the two oils that I can say really helped me get out of my depression. It really guided me, and it helped me with that. And as we can see from the chemical compositions, and it's funny, I think it's really fun to choose your essential oils first intuitively, and then you go into the chemical compositions, and then you can see if you were right about what you chose. And most likely, you usually are on point when you listen to your inner guidance. So this is rosemary. Rosemary, I think, is a very underestimated essential oil, because it grows abundantly everywhere as a plant. It's also very powerful. And as an essential oil, it's very interesting. This is one of my go-to essential oils for most spiritual disorders and imbalances. What I do is, once you ease the soul spirit with joy, with lavender and citrus, then I work with rosemary to expel the stagnant energy, right? Where I see it as where citrus helps move the stagnant energy, rosemary helps move it out in the form of phlegm and bacteria. Just like we don't want to repress a cough, we also don't want to, just like we don't want to repress a cough, we also don't want to repress our spiritual energy, right? We want to expel it. And yeah, my husband's mother, actually, when I started learning about aromatherapy, I've been with my husband about 18 years now. I was going to say 17. She grew rosemary in her front yard, and she would get bundles of rosemary, and she would like sweep our bodies in like sweeping motions, and she would do cleansing on us, energetic cleansing on us, and it was really cool. I thought it was really cool that she did that as I was learning about this as well. So geranium, I'm going to go through these a little bit faster so that we can get to the recipes. Geranium is one of my favorite oils to use during the new moon. It's it has a lot of feminine energy. It's really good when you have too much adrenaline. It helps you flow as opposed to control. And cedarwood, it is also said to be aphrodisiac, and it's very good for grounding. And so those are good for the first two chakras, all of the energies that are beneath our solar plexus. That's what cedarwood is really helpful for. So here are the essential oil recipes. Let me take another sip of water. So as you can see, I like steps, right? I have a background in teaching, not just as a teacher's aide, but I also used to teach high school students life skill workshops. And so I have my little step-by-step pages here. So step one is decide what your creation will be used for, and then you choose your essential oil. So when deciding what your creation will be used for, you want to keep in mind what your morning routine is, and do you want to use it for, during your bath? Do you want to have something for your midday lunch break, something for evening, or you want something for that is going to support you weekly or when you're exercising. And then when you choose what you will use it for, then you can decide what you're going to make, right? You want to make it easy on yourself. Do you want to choose a scrub? Do you want to choose a blend or a spray? I love using body sprays because I use them anytime and I always have them with me. I have them in my car, my purse. They're just easy to use and I don't have to wash my hands afterward. You know, I love using body oils as opposed to lotions. But, you know, when I moisturize, you know, my elbows or my knees or anything, you know, we always have to wash our hands afterward. And so I find that body sprays are just easier and more convenient to use. And so again, step 2, I like using these 4 ways of choosing. You know, the first way is you can choose your essential oils based on their chemical components or based on the therapeutic effect that you want them to have. You can choose them by the experience or emotion that you want to have to get from them. You can choose your favorite scent. That is always a good, that's also intuitive. The fourth one is intuitive. But also, I believe that the scent that you are attracted to, that's intuitively the scent that is, you know, that your body needs at the moment, that is calling you. And so, you know, I like to say to choose 1 to 4 oils but I understand synergy, right? We choose 3 or more for synergy. I have many blends that I use 5 essential oils. But I like to choose 1 to start developing a relationship with the aroma guides. For those of you that have experience with flower essences, right, usually we work with 1 flower at a time. And so if you're just starting out, or if you want to develop a relationship with the plant spirit, choose 1 and just see how that works out for you. And then step 3, of course, is you set your self-care intention. This is the most important step. When you make a blend, always give it some energy, hold it in your hands, put it next to your heart, and set an intention. What is it for? How is it going to serve me? If you make it for someone else, this is my favorite part. When I make it for somebody else, I always hold the blend. I close my eyes, I take some deep breaths, and I say some intentions for them. You know, intentions are just like prayers, and you can call it whatever you want. But you set your intention always. Oh, and also with the when you set your intention, now that you've created your blend, you're not going to let it sit there, right? You created your blend. Let's go back to that one. You create, the intention is so that you can use it, right? You have your blend. You also have your self-care plan that we talked about earlier, and that is going to assure you of using your essential oils. Okay, so now let's get to the recipes. So this dream recipe is a lot. I find that a lot of my clients need help with sleep. I actually don't need help with sleep. I sleep very well. But this is a really good blend that I have had a lot of good results. I actually have a lot of testimonials on my website that say how great this worked for them. So I use lavender, clary sage, and Roman chamomile as my base. And then I add a few other essential oils that I feel that they will need. This is a recipe for an energy clearing bath. I don't usually advise baths for people because I know that they take really long and they take a lot of effort. But I do recommend this if you suffer from depression. Baths are really, really healing, and they remove the spiritual and the stagnant residues that negative past experiences leave behind. And that most of the time is what leads us to depression. Baths, if you don't have a lot of energy, just fill your bath and just go in the water, and you just have to lay there, and it's really, really healing. So this is a grounding spray. I find that this recipe, it helps your stagnant energy move from your head, from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. And this is why I like to combine citrus and cedarwood, because, as I mentioned before, cedarwood helps with the two bottom, the first two chakras, the grounding, the first chakra and the second chakra. And the grapefruit helps with just, uplifting and helps you feel joy. And I have one more quote. I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples. And I wanted to leave you all with this because whenever you think that self-care is selfish, just think of this quote, because any little act of self-care that you do for yourself, it will ripple out in a positive way and benefit not only you, but everyone around you. And so I hope that this webinar was helpful for everyone. Here's my contact page. And that is all. I hope you all enjoyed it. And Kelly, I'm going to pass it to you now.
Thank you so much, Betty. That was really wonderful. I really enjoyed listening to you sharing your
Thank
personal
you so much.
story and how you helped yourself and then helping others. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelly.